She had only stepped outside the courthouse for a moment, hoping the ordeal would finally be over. But what happened next shattered everything she thought she knew about justice. Police swarmed her, hands rough and unforgiving, accusations flying, and the world around her blurred into chaos. Her heart raced, every step echoing fear, confusion, and disbelief. And yet, just minutes later, the same woman who had been attacked and humiliated found herself walking back inside, this time to a place no one had expected. A place where power, authority, and justice would belong to her. The question is, how did she get there? Her name was Aaliyah, a woman who had always carried herself with quiet strength. Yet life had never been gentle with her. Growing up in neighborhoods shadowed by systemic inequality, she had learned early that the world often judged her before it knew her. Every setback, from unfair school discipline to overlooked job opportunities, had left invisible scars, shaping a resilience she sometimes questioned if she even deserved. On this particular day, she was dressed in a modest suit, papers clutched tightly in her hand, her eyes fixed on the courthouse steps as if each step might carry her closer to vindication. The morning sun did little to ease the weight pressing on her chest. Police presence was heavy, as if the very air around the courthouse was laced with suspicion. She wasn't here to make trouble. She was here to fight for justice in a system that had often turned its back on people like her. Passers-by whispered, some curious, some wary, but Aaliyah kept her focus. Her mind flickered to all the faces she had seen, friends and strangers alike, who had suffered quietly, who had been silenced, overlooked, or dismissed. Even as she approached the doors, a small, persistent voice in her head reminded her, "Don't let them define you, don't let fear win." She had faced challenges before, but something about today felt different, heavier, as if the world had decided to test not just her patience, but her very spirit. Every heartbeat was a countdown, a prelude to something she could not yet imagine. And while she had no way of knowing it, the moments ahead would not only challenge her courage, they would set the stage for a reversal no one could have predicted. As Aaliyah lingered on the courthouse steps, the hum of the city seemed to fade into a distant echo. Every movement felt magnified, every stare heavier. She could sense the weight of expectation pressing down, not just from the law but from society itself. For people like her, each step into a courthouse carried the invisible burden of history, centuries of prejudice, of being judged before being heard. The police officers stationed near the entrance eyed her with thinly veiled suspicion. Her chest tightened as one officer shifted, his gaze lingering a moment too long, the subtle tightening of his hand on his belt unmistakable. She had encountered these looks before, contempt disguised as caution, but never this intense. The whispers from the crowd seemed to grow louder, even though their words were indistinct. Each heartbeat was a drum of unease, echoing in her ears like a warning she could not ignore. Then it happened. A push from behind, a shove that sent her stumbling toward the cold stone steps. The world tipped violently, and in an instant, the air was filled with shouts. Hands grabbed at her, pressing her into a space she could not escape. Fear surged, sharp and suffocating. She could feel her pulse in her throat, the sting of indignity as strangers judged her guilt before any proof existed. The chaos was relentless. Officers speaking in clipped tones, the crowd murmuring, cameras flashing, each sound a jarring reminder of her vulnerability. In those moments, time slowed. Aaliyah's mind raced, fragments of her life flashing before her eyes. Childhood birthdays interrupted by injustice, nights spent worrying about the safety of her younger siblings, the quiet humiliation of opportunities denied because of the color of her skin. But beneath the fear, beneath the humiliation, a spark remained, a spark that refused to be extinguished. She straightened herself, not out of defiance, but out of necessity. Her dignity demanded it. Minutes dragged like hours, and yet the world seemed unaware of the storm raging within her. The police eventually stepped back, perhaps thinking the ordeal was over. Aaliyah, trembling but unbroken, took a breath. She reminded herself that this moment, as terrifying as it was not the end. She had fought too long and too hard to be defined by a single encounter, and in that fragile space between fear and courage, she realized something profound. The same system that had tried to subdue her could not dictate her destiny entirely. Her eyes rose to the courthouse doors. In that moment, the city's indifferent gaze felt distant, and the weight of systemic injustice felt almost tangible, pressing on her chest. But alongside it, a strange sense of clarity emerged. Every shove, every wrongful assumption, every whispered doubt fueled a resolve she could not have felt before. She was no longer simply a person subjected to injustice. She was a force quietly gathering strength, preparing for a moment that would redefine not only her story, but the expectations of everyone who had ever doubted her. Inside the courthouse, the air was thick with tension. Every step Aaliyah took echoed like a drumbeat of defiance against the injustice she had just endured. The room felt impossibly still, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for what was about to unfold. She could feel the weight of every gaze, some curious, some skeptical, all measuring her, judging her, assuming they already knew her story. Minutes earlier, the world had tried to diminish her. Officers had tried to intimidate her. The crowd outside had whispered assumptions she had not asked for, and yet now, she was moving forward, not in fear, but with deliberate purpose. Every fiber of her being screamed that she belonged here, that her voice mattered, that her presence alone was a challenge to the system that had long dismissed people like her. The courtroom seemed to shrink around her as she approached the bench. The same institution that had been used to enforce authority over her, that had allowed injustice to flourish in subtle and glaring ways, was now the stage for a reversal no one had anticipated. The judge, the officials, even the murmuring spectators, all felt the quiet force of her resolve. In that moment, Aaliyah became more than a victim of circumstance. She became a symbol of resilience, of the defiance that burns quietly in those who refuse to be silenced. And then she took her seat. The room collectively exhaled, or maybe it held its breath. But the shift was undeniable. Every injustice, every humiliation, every moment of doubt had led to this instant. It was more than a position of authority. It was a declaration. Aaliyah's presence challenged assumptions, dismantled prejudice, and illuminated a simple, powerful truth. Justice is not only about laws or institutions, it is about people, courage, and the refusal to be defined by oppression. Her heartbeat slowed, but the intensity did not fade. The world had attempted to push her down, to dictate the limits of her potential, but here she sat, unbowed, unbroken, undeniable. And in that silence, heavy and potent, the full magnitude of her journey could be felt. Every struggle she had endured, every barrier she had faced, converged in this singular, electric moment. The world could see her finally in her full humanity and power. As Aaliyah sat at the bench, the weight of everything she had endured began to settle, not as a burden, but as proof of her resilience. Each challenge, each unjust shove, each whispered doubt had been a step toward this moment. She realized that justice was not just a word carved into marble. It was a lived, earned experience, shaped by courage and determination. In that courtroom, she was no longer defined by the prejudices of others. She was the embodiment of what it meant to rise above them. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the quiet revolution that had just taken place within those walls. But for those who understood, who had witnessed her struggle from afar, Aaliyah became a beacon, a reminder that strength often appears in the most vulnerable moments, and that power can emerge from perseverance, dignity, and unwavering resolve. Her journey was not just her own. It symbolized the countless voices that had been silenced, overlooked, or dismissed. Through her, their stories gained life, their struggles gained acknowledgement. And yet, as triumphant as this moment was, Aaliyah knew that change was ongoing. Justice could be fragile, society could be unkind, and biases could persist. But she also understood that each small act of courage ripples outward, inspiring others, breaking cycles and challenging assumptions. Every person who saw her rise, every mind that reconsidered its prejudices was a victory in itself. Her story ended not with a conclusion, but with a question. How many more would be denied their moment, their voice, their chance to rise? How many would continue to struggle, unseen, unheard, waiting for the world to recognize their worth? And yet the answer was clear in her presence. Courage can carve a path where none seem to exist, and justice can be claimed, even against the odds. If Aaliyah's story moved you, left you thinking, or sparked a fire inside, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to show support, share it to spread awareness, and comment below with your thoughts, because every voice matters and together we can shine a light on injustice.